Our special guest today is Michael Tunia, and he'll tell us more about SAT-7's ministry in Afghanistan. Michael has an important role in SAT-7's Persian broadcasting over the last 12 years. Between 2008 and 2010, he helped set up the first SAT-7 Pars studio in Cyprus. But more recently, he's been a member of one of SAT-7's partner agencies, Media Mission, The Messengers. So welcome, Michael, and thank you again for joining us today from your holiday.
Thanks so much for having me. Nice to be
So
here.
you're very welcome. So firstly, Michael, in the UK, many of us know Afghanistan only from news broadcasts and sadly as a setting for conflicts. But you really do know it more intimately, don't you?
Yes, my Scandinavian parents and we came to Afghanistan in 1977 when I was only 1.5 years old. And we then returned to Northern Europe in '88. So I spent most of my preteen childhood in the capital, Kabul. I learned to speak the Afghan variation of Persian called Dari by playing football and flying kites with local boys in our neighborhood. And even though the Soviet Union invaded the country in 1979, there wasn't much fighting in Kabul during the '80s. So most of my childhood memories are very good ones. And like all Persians, the Afghans are very friendly and well known for their hospitality. So I've always said that if the superpowers of the world hadn't decided to play the great game of conquest in Afghanistan, I'm sure it would have become one of the most popular tourist destinations in Central Asia for those who like adventures in beautiful nature.
Mm, very thought-provoking. So after spending a good part of your childhood in Afghanistan, your family moved, I understand, to Finland. But your memories of the country then took you back there when you were 19. How had it changed?
Well, actually, we returned as a family for a few months during the summer of '92. And that was quite an exciting time for a 16-year-old as myself, as that was exactly when the communist regime was overthrown by the Mujahideen, the Afghan guerrilla fighters. So the Kabul I left in '88 looked rather similar in '92, but then the following years, a civil war between the different guerrilla groups destroyed large parts of the capital. So when I came back to Afghanistan after I'd graduated in '94 as a 19-year-old, my rosy childhood memories were updated with the realities of war. So during '95, I volunteered within the solar energy project that my father had helped start in the '80s. And then I also traveled to southern Afghanistan on a research trip. I got to experience the Taliban firsthand when they were in their beginning of their conquest. So, but thankfully, I returned to Scandinavia to start studying Persian at university before the Taliban took over Kabul.
And how would you say that Afghanistan has changed since that time in the mid 90s?
Well, the latter part of the '90s was very, let's say, un-Afghan due to the fact that the Taliban's ideology had been imported from Saudi Arabia, and that these fighters had been created, indoctrinated, and funded by Pakistani, Saudi, and American intelligence services. But many Afghans had lost family members during the war and or grown up in refugee camps in Pakistan, where they'd lost touch with their Afghan roots. So Afghanistan experts believe that this contributed to these traditionally rather moderate Muslims becoming more fundamental or extreme in their practice of Islam. But for most Afghans, the Taliban's reign of terror was something they were very happy to get rid of in late 2001. But then sadly, the NATO forces led by the USA we're actually just seen as the next invaders in a long row of conquerors. I myself returned to Afghanistan in 2006 and 2007 as a cameraman, guide, and translator for a Finnish journalist. And most of our reports from the Finnish Finnish TV news were not filled with much hope for the future. However, during the past 19 years, the situation in Afghanistan has thankfully slowly become slightly better, although 5 years ago, ISIS also entered the conflict. And this sadly led to suicide bombings becoming more frequent. And currently, this is still one of the most tangible security concerns in the country.
Absolutely. And we do know that violence continues to drive Afghans from their country. And today they're the second largest refugee population in the world. But at the same time, we hear that more Afghans are watching SAT-7 than ever, some in their own home country and others in neighbouring Iran or elsewhere. Could you share something about this?
Yes, well, as I explained in my previous answers, the Afghan people haven't had much hope in the future when it comes to the worldly situation improving. And when you're desperate, you often try to seek solace in the spiritual realm. So as there's always been a great spiritual thirst during these past 40 years of strife, many try to connect with God by allowing themselves to try to understand if other faiths can maybe offer them comfort, as Islam no longer seems to have any answers. And if there's something which SAT-7's programs are good at, is that they can give the viewer hope. SAT-7 Pars has numerous programs that not only explain how to come into a relationship with God, but also how to develop one's newfound faith. As Dari is just another regional variety of the Persian language, this means that Afghans can easily understand all programs produced in Iranian Farsi, as Rachel mentioned earlier. And a few years ago, our channel started broadcasting on Yahsat, and this satellite, it has a much better penetration in Afghanistan than the previous one called Hotbird. And this has actually resulted in the audience response from within Afghanistan increasing with several 100% during these past few years. And for this reason, SAT-7 Pars has employed new audience relations staff to especially take care of our new Afghan viewers. And we also try to produce more TV programs in specifically Dari.
That's so encouraging. So could you tell us a little bit more about the programs made in Dari, specifically for Afghanistan, and maybe about some of the Persian language programs that you've been involved in that many Afghans also watch?
Yes, sure. Well, first of all, as Rachel mentioned, it's important to note that our Dari programs are made by our Afghan partner called Pamir Ministries, and they currently have 2 weekly programs on our channel. One live show broadcast from Canada called The Secret of Life, and a pre-recorded one from a studio in Australia called Window of Light. And new episodes of these weekly programs have been broadcast since 2013. And then in 2014, I produced my first Dari program. And in this health program, an Afghan heart surgeon talked about those illnesses that are most prevalent in today's Afghanistan and what kind of treatments are needed. But he also spoke about how we can heal our spiritual sickness by getting to know Jesus. As it's difficult to find new program hosts who speak well Dari and are willing to have their faces on TV, it's taken me several years to find another mature Afghan Christian for SAT-7 Pars. So I really look forward to being able to direct my second Dari program in the beginning of next year. And this teaching program presented by an assistant pastor from an Afghan church in Germany, will be recorded at our partner studio, IRR TV, here in Finland.
Well, we'll certainly be able to pray for you and for that work in just a few minutes. But maybe finally, as SAT-7's work has expanded, I know that we've also begun making programs for another neighbouring Persian-speaking country, Tajikistan, and I know that this is your current project. So maybe just finally, could you share a little bit about that?
Yeah, thanks for the question. I've always felt that it's important for all Persian speakers to be able to watch programs in their own heart language. And as SAT-7 Pars hasn't really had any programs in the Tajik variety, I started working on programs for Tajiks in 2016. During the past 3 years, I've traveled to Tajikistan twice and produced 3 Tajik programs. The first one was a music and testimony show where I used a lot of my drone footage of beautiful mountains and lakes in Tajikistan. The second one was a teaching program about the foundations of the Christian faith. And the most recent one was the discussion show with a married couple about how to live as a Christian family in a predominantly Muslim country. But due to the coronavirus pandemic, I've had to postpone my 2 newest Tajik programs. So these youth and women's shows that were originally planned for recording during 2020 will be produced in 2021 instead. But towards the end of this year, I still hope to be able to direct 2 new shows in Tajik. The one in November is a teaching program called Life-Giving Message. And the one in December is a mental health program for women. So please pray that a second wave of COVID-19 will not hit the world this autumn, so that my 4th and 5th Tajik shows for SAT-7 Pars can be recorded without any problems. Thanks for your prayers.
Well, we'll definitely pray for that, and I hope all our people on the call today will agree that that was really a fascinating insight, Michael, into what you're doing and what you've done, and also some of your history going back to your childhood days. So thank you for taking the time to share with us. We did ask Michael earlier for some prayer points, which are going to come up on your screens now.